and came up with this plot. You can see that again, this is pretty good or strong correlation, and it does give us a linear sort of situation, so we can go ahead and make a linear equation. And that linear equation in this case is going to be y equals negative 1164.8 x plus 11,395. So at this point, what we need to do is just take that information back to the um, problem itself and see if we can figure out what that's going to mean. If we look into this a little bit, they're asking us a question, and right here. So based on the table, if a company sold 5,100,000 packages of cups at a price of $5 each, how much money would they take in? So we need to figure out, okay, so we're going to sell that many packages. Each package is going to be $5. What's the overall revenue for this? How much money is this company going to take in? So that's actually pretty simple. You just take those two numbers and you multiply them. And if you do that, you're going to end up with 25,500,000. Okay, so that's how much money they would take in if they used that price. On the other hand, they also want to know, well, what if the company goes, if we go way down here to the end, what if they sell 200,000 cups at $9.50 each? How much money would the company take in? Well, they're going to take in whatever those two are multiplied together. Again, remember, this 200 is actually representing 200,000, so that's why they're using that number. So if I take 200,000 times 950, I'm going to show you a little shortcut here. 2 times 950 is 19. And so that takes care of the 2 part of it, and then I need to add 5 zeros at the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to get a total of $1,900,000. Okay, now obviously the $25,500 or $25,500,000 looks significantly more than that. The question though is, why is it not correct to conclude that more profit is made by selling for $5 than for $9.50? What makes it that this isn't necessarily going to produce more profit than this? Giving you a little time to think here if you didn't figure it out already. We have to remember a couple things, but most specifically, we have to remember that we're making significantly fewer items down here when we use the 200,000. So I'm only using the material necessary to produce 200,000 cups, or packages of cups, I should say, and what we end up with is a much higher price. And so it's actually possible that this is going to produce me a greater profit overall because I have way low cost and a way high markup, if you want to think of it that way. Whereas down here, I have a lot more items that I'm producing at a lower cost, and so my profit margin, if you will, might only be a couple of cents, whereas I might be earning a couple of dollars if I'm selling them for $9.50. So that's the sort of thing that companies always have to think about, find ways to maximize their profit. All right, I want to take us back to number 5 real quick to talk about a couple of vocabulary terms. We were asked to predict in this situation what would happen if we made the wholesale price $20. Okay, we talked about what that did and what that gave us. That $20, notice, does not show up or is not within the range of these numbers that are up here. When that happens, we call that extrapolation. We're trying to use our regression line to predict what will happen to our values outside of the values that we've collected. So it's, the domain and the range of our table here So it's not between 23 and 40. It ended up being less than 23. That's called extrapolation. The other vocab term then is essentially the opposite of that. Interpolation is when you use a regression line to predict values that are within the data set. So if I asked you to pick or find out the quantity of demand for something that was like 31 or set at $31, that would be interpolation because it's kind of within the range of values that we had. Those are some vocab terms you're going to see. Okay, the other thing I want to point out, we talked about this last time, I think, but I want to just make it extra clear what's going on here. This number, I should probably even highlight that in a different color. This number right here, the negative 155.88, that's our slope, and it's really, 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 really important that we understand what that actually represents. And so in our scenario here, it's representing the change in quantity compared to the change in price. And I just have to remind you that we're dealing with the change in y divided by the change in x. My y values right now are representing the quantity of, what were we dealing with in this situation? Widgets. How the quantity of widgets changes for every dollar increase in price. So what I would say, if I were to turn this into a sentence, this number, the negative 155.88, represents that the quantity of widgets demanded is going to be reduced by 155.88. Remember, this was in thousands. So 155.88 thousand widgets for every dollar